Till you hear me so loud and clearly, this is the last time you'll ever hear from me.
Hi there guys, welcome to Jonesy's Leeds United season review. I wasn't originally going to do one of these, but I thought, you know, I'm not going to be able to do many more vlogs really until sort of the summer really gets going and we start seeing a bit of transfer activity and whatnot. So I decided to do this season review. About 2 hours or so ago, I decided to put a question out there to all my Twitter followers, just to describe Leeds United season in 3 words. My 3 words was just one to forget, because I mean it really was, wasn't it? And I had some really great replies. So Jordan Armour said frustrating, hoof and doof, which I thought was quite good. Sam Matthews, these were all one words, I think he's relating to hashtags on Twitter. Ongoing, Warnock out and Bates out, which again I think that's quite good. Carl Asquith, I do like this one. Fuck in shit, which is very clever there from Carl. Gavin says bring on August, and I think, you know, we can definitely all agree with that one. Keith J 100% LUFC, he says same old crap. Again, can't disagree there. White Mank MOT1, waste of time. Zach Lewis, disappointing, hoof and Byram, which is brilliant there. Again, along the same lines, Harry Jones, one Sam Byram. Christopher Galton, glad it's over. And finally, Imunda, Tom Lee's fault. I think regarding Neil Warnock's views on Tom Lee towards the end of the season. So really, I mean, all of those tweets really sum up what this season's been. I mean, you know, waste of time really, I think is the one that sticks out there. And like I said, you know, one to forget, because it really has just been one of those seasons really. Because I think the most disappointing thing is we came into this season with quite a bit of, well, with some sort of positivity. You know, the majority of people at that time still felt Warnock was probably the right, you know, man for the job. You know, he got his whole summer and whole pre-season to himself. You know, he'd had you know, it's his first chance for a full season in charge at the club, and you know, myself included, you know, I thought he was the right man to do the job at Leeds and, you know, get us into those promotion places. Obviously there was whispers of takeover talks and everything, and that sort of was ongoing at the time, so, you know, that was something to look forward to. But I mean, when we looked at the summer and definitely, you know, the transfers that were made, there was nothing really, apart from Diouf obviously signing just before that Shrewsbury game in the Capital One Cup, the first game of the season. There was no real signing that made everyone sort of sit up and think, oh, you know, that's a major signing for the club, you know, he's going to be one of the players to really do it for us this season. Obviously the Diouf signing split a lot, you know, in the Leeds camp. I mean, originally I wasn't overjoyed really, you know. I mean, obviously Diouf is one of those players that you either, you know, love him or hate him, and usually you only love him when he's at your club. So, you know, in the past definitely a lot of hatred towards him, but I mean, for me, I think he's such a good player, and he's proved his skill, and he's proved his worth this season. And I really hope, you know, he's used well next season and that he behaves himself, because, you know, I do think he's quite an important player to us. But, you know, apart from that, I mean, there was a lot of frees, you know, a lot of you know, low money transfers really. I mean, we managed to buy sort of half of Portsmouth's squad really, didn't we? You know, Jason Pearce, Luke Varney, Jamie Ashdown, David Norris, of course. And I mean, you know, at the time it was like, well, they're okay players, but were they really players that were, you know, combined that were going to get us in, you know, up into the Premiership? I mean, none of us really thought it at the time. You know, loan signing of Michael Tong, obviously bringing Paddy Kenny in as goalkeeper, and obviously, like I said, you know, El Hadj Diouf. I mean, like I say, you know, the main thing, there was nothing there that made any Leeds fans think, you know, that's going to make a team that is going to gain us promotion. But you know, we wanted to see how it went, and you know, the start of the season didn't start off too bad. Obviously, we had the run in the Capital One Cup, you know, 4-0 and 4-0 wins against Oxford and Shrewsbury. No, it was 3-0 against Oxford, wasn't it? Sorry. Obviously leading on to Southampton and Everton later in the run, but I'll get onto that in a bit. And obviously that the win against Wolves, first match of the season, we thought, maybe this isn't going to be too bad, but straight away there was just the sort of same old signs from last season, the season before. Nothing really seemed to have changed. Warnock's sort of style of football didn't grab anyone's attention really. There were no real results that again made you think that this was going to be our season. It was just a lot of inconsistency. We'd have some good wins, but then we'd go on to draw poor games or lose quite poor games. And like I say, there just didn't seem to be anything too different from the season before. So then, questions started to be asked then, really. I mean, quite an early positive thing was the introduction of Sam Byram. I mean, he hadn't even played a professional game, a first team game for Leeds United in the past, and straight away, from first game of the season he was drafted in at right back. And I mean, he's been the probably the most positive point of this season for us, really. I mean, he's just, from that very first game all the way through the season, he's just grown every single match. Obviously, I mean, he got that worldly goal against Oxford in the Capital One Cup. I mean, the skill there, and his confidence to actually pull that goal off. I mean, it was my goal of the season, really. I preferred that to Ross's goal against Tottenham. But from that moment we knew that we had a new young star in our side, and he definitely he never really disappointed. One or two mistakes throughout the season, but for a young lad in his first full season at the club, it's been absolutely out of this world. And I mean, that was the main real sort of positive to take from the season and in that early stages. Obviously the other positive point at the start, like I mentioned already, was the cup run in the Capital One Cup. We were expected to win the first games against Shrewsbury and Oxford. No disrespect to them, obviously. And going on to the Everton game, no one had really given us much hope, and we didn't really think there was much hope. We hadn't really had a great run into the game. I think we'd beaten Nottingham Forest a week before, perhaps. But with the way Everton were especially playing in the Premier League, we thought we were probably going to get stuffed with Leighton Baines running down the left hand side, and of course Marouane Fellaini, Jelovic up front, and Pienaar, players like that. But I mean, to come out with that 2-1 win was absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Aidy White, after 4 minutes, was it, with that phenomenal goal. Rudy Austin's little cheeky tap in the second half, and I mean, we fully deserved that victory. And again, it was little victories like that kept sort of pumping the crowd up and thinking, that we're showing what we can really do here. And again, that's why it was so disappointing, because we were playing like that and showing that we had something about us, but then going on the next week and losing the game we were expecting to win, or just drawing a game, and it was just really just a massive letdown. And it was just proof that although every now and again we were showing signs of an alright sort of decent team, we clearly didn't have that consistency and that sort of experience in the side that showed that we were going to get promotion. So already those early signs were clearly there. Obviously went on to beat Southampton 3-0 in the next round, which a fantastic result again, but Southampton, Nigel Adkins didn't really seem like he was too fussed about the cup. He'd made so many changes to his team, and by all accounts, Southampton didn't really put up much of a fight against us, and the fact we won 3-0 so comfortably kind of proved that, really. So of course then that led on to the fans' favourite, what we kind of missed for so many years, a massive home tie in the quarter-final at home to Chelsea, our old friends and foes there. Obviously didn't end up as we were wanting. Becchio getting that goal in the first half, and us again playing pretty well. To be honest, we looked good for that 1-0 lead. Obviously going on to lose 5-1. Chelsea really turned the style on in the second half, made some subs and brought their top players on. I feel that the score was probably a bit harsh on Leeds. Chelsea probably deserved the win in the end. But 5-1 sort of made Chelsea look a bit too good really than what they were on the night. Maybe a 3-1 would have been a bit more fair, but that was a positive run for the club. Created quite a bit of money, so obviously that gave the fans something to cheer about during that period, and was quite a positive really. But I mean the problem was over that time as well. We still had Ken Bates at the helm. The transfer saga was just going on and on and on. We didn't know what was happening. Bates seemed to be behind, sort of stalling it and things. Ticket prices were still an issue, and fans, were wanting to boycott matches, weren't bothered in coming. Bates making silly comments about the fans again. Attendances were getting lower and lower. There was just a massive despondency around the place. There was no atmosphere at Ellen Road. There was nothing to get behind, from the team. There was no real passion showing from them. There were 3 losses in a row before the takeover actually happened. Against Burnley, which was a midweek match. There was that 6-1 drubbing at home to Watford. Obviously, when we went down to 9 men, and that nasty injury to Rodolphe Austin. And then the 1-0 loss to Millwall, which was on TV. And it was just everyone at that point. It was just probably the biggest low point of the season, really. But then the takeover happened, and again that brought everyone's spirits back up, and thought maybe this is the kick up the backside that we need for this season, and something to really kick-start us. And we thought that was it. The takeover happened. We had 3 fantastic wins against Crystal Palace, Leicester and Huddersfield. I mean, Crystal Palace and Leicester at that time were sort of fighting at the top of the league. Huddersfield away has always been a bogey trip for us, so to win 4-2 there, was absolutely fantastic. Becchio got some 2 fantastic goals there. So again, it was such a rollercoaster season, and this was definitely one of the highest points, I would probably say, of the season. I mean, just those 3 wins, to say that's a high point kind of says a lot about the season. And with that takeover, I mean, there was Jerome Thomas was brought in on. And with that takeover, of course, Jerome Thomas was brought in, and Alan Tate, the defender. And they seemed to make a massive impact to start with. I mean, finally we had someone on the wing, in Jerome Thomas, who actually took defenders on and liked to get crosses into the box. And it was things were looking up, but it didn't last long. The inconsistency came back into the team. The players, although for those 3 matches, again sort of looked like they got together and the spirits were up. They started to look sort of down in the dumps again, and just like they weren't really playing with any sort of passion. And we were out of the cup. A lot of the players were starting to just look really off the boil. Ross wasn't really very prolific up front. Obviously Becchio was the one kind of scoring all the goals and really dragging the team along. Again, we'll get onto him. We'll get onto him in a little bit. Went to the Christmas period, which was quite a really, it wasn't what we wanted. Again, more inconsistency, a few wins, but disappointing defeats at Hull, which apparently we didn't even have a shot on target or something. We didn't even have a shot, and 4-2 away at Forest, which was quite embarrassing on that day. And then of course there was the big transfer, the sale of Luciano Becchio. Which it wasn't a surprise at all. I mean, Neil Warnock just seemed to keep blaming him, week in, week out, saying that it was all down to him, and it's because of him that we were playing so poorly, which I didn't take at all. We had a player there who was one of the leading scorers in the division. He'd scored 15 goals for us. The majority of the fans were behind him, but a lot for some reason were giving him stick, saying that he wasn't doing much else. Well, it was scoring 15 goals for us. I'm pretty sure he'd have got maybe 25, up to 30 if he would have stayed longer with us. We had someone there who was scoring goals. The rest of the team weren't contributing. For me, he was scoring goals. He was winning his matches. That's all that matters. I don't see what the big problem that was that people had with him. But obviously Neil Warnock felt the same way, kept saying that it was disrupting the team. And obviously on transfer deadline day he went to Norwich and we got Steve Morrison. And I just want to pick out a stat. Now I'm not saying this stat because I believe it's because of Becchio going that this happened. It might just be a coincidence, but it just kind of summed up the club really. So the 13 games leading up to Becchio's departure, whilst he was in the club, over those 13 games we won 7 and we lost 6, gaining 21 points. And then the 13 games after Becchio's departure, these are just league games by the way, not taking cup games into account. The 13 league games after, which then go up to the time where Brian McDermott joined us, we won 2 of those 13 league games and lost 7, where we only gained 10 points. Now obviously the goals started to dry up. We didn't have a prolific goal scorer. Ross McCormack for some reason this season, he even said himself it was a poor season for him. Chipped in with some decent goals every now and again, but it was clearly just one of those seasons for him. I'm sure next season, he'll come back raring strong, and whether it was just the style of football that we were playing under Warnock and the tactics, that it probably just wasn't suiting him. But I mean that says a lot. I mean 2 wins in 13 games, and people were still thinking that we could get in the playoffs towards the end of Warnock's reign. I mean that's not promotion standards, is it? 2 wins in 13 and 7 losses. So that kind of proved it was around that time, just after Christmas, that I'd kind of accepted that this season was pretty much a write-off, and that we weren't going to be going anywhere. But a lot of fans, we're still keeping the faith, which you need that. You need that at the club. You need those fans. But for me personally, I didn't really see it going anywhere, and I definitely made that clear in my vlogs there. Obviously Morrison was brought in. Obviously with that swap deal with Becchio, people were saying you couldn't expect him to take over Becchio's place, but then again it was hard not to expect him to take over, because we didn't have another prolific goal scorer and it was a swap deal, so of course it was going to be a replacement. And I mean right from the off I made it clear on here that I wasn't really too impressed with him. And I wanted him to do well. I really did want him to do so well for us. And again, I believe next season, under a new style of football and with McDermott in charge, and hopefully he'll be 100% fit this time, I'm hoping he can have a really decent season for us. But he just never ever looked interested in the game. I mean, he scored against Blackpool. Obviously he scored his first goal there, which it was kind of one that he couldn't really miss and you'd expect him to put away. He scored the 2 goals against Palace where we drew 2-2, and that was the game where I thought finally he's going to get the confidence from these goals and he's going to go on to do something, because he took the goal so well and it just showed that it sort of lifted him a bit. But then it went on to the other games and he just went back to his old self. There were games where you didn't even know he was playing. He just completely went missing. Didn't even attempt to sort of win any headers. No real pace to him. Again, I know he wasn't 100% fit, but for me it just wasn't good enough. So obviously we weren't getting that goal source anymore. And I mean it was in that awful the 13 games where we only got 2 wins, where I really thought Warnock should have left then. I mean if the board were wanting to really gain promotion at that point, that was probably the time to make a change and bring someone new and fresh in to go for promotion. In the end I'm kind of glad that didn't happen, because I don't feel we needed to get promoted this year with the squad that we had, because it would have been a waste and probably been quite an embarrassment really when we think about it. And around that time there weren't really any managers around that I felt could have done the job, so it was probably, looking back on it now in hindsight, probably good that we left the second of Warnock till later. But at the time it was around drawing to Peterborough at home and the loss against Huddersfield. It was around that time that I thought he should have gone. And I mean at that time again the morale around Ellen Road had just gone completely down the pan. Attendances were getting even lower. The fans were starting to get on the backs of the players, and players that before had been playing quite well. I was quite happy with Paul Green for the first half of the season, but then he had that little injury, and then since he came back, he played really, really poorly for me. His passing just seemed to always go to the opposition players, and he always seemed to lose the ball sort of right on halfway line and give the ball to the opposition where they were breaking away and getting goal scoring opportunities. That was quite disappointing to see. Obviously, as I've already mentioned, McCormack wasn't on form. The defence was really makeshift, due to various injuries and stuff. And, just the effect around the whole place, the way they were playing, the tactics from Warnock, it was just depressing. And as I've said many times on my vlogs here, it's definitely been probably the most depressing season I've had as a Leeds United fan. I've been going since 1997 as a season ticket holder, and this has definitely been the lowest point for me as a Leeds United fan. So obviously, Warnock got sacked after the Derby game on that Monday night. And straight away, we were looking to see who would come in. There was obviously talks of Paolo Di Canio. Nigel Adkins was the first favourite. People, Gus Poyet always comes up, when there's vacancy. And there was McDermott, which at the time, I believe I actually said on here that I didn't feel he'd be the right man for the job. Obviously, he ended up being picked as manager, and I can't think of a better man for the job after seeing what he's done since he's come in. Just his persona around the place, the way he talks in interviews, the things that he's wanting to change around the club. He's not just talking about the players and sort of the skill around the squad. He's talking about wanting all the players living in the same area, including himself and his staff. Talking about wanting to change, stuff in training, making changes to the actual training ground, the way that the players travel to and from games and things. He's looking at the bigger picture at the club, and he said himself he's wanting to build this club up that he keeps calling it a great club, with the fan base and everything. And he's just looking at the bigger picture, and it's a breath of fresh air. He really, really is, and I really believe as long as he's given the backing this summer by GFH, as I've said before, and he wants these 6 or 7 players that he's handed them a list of, I believe we really, really will be up there next season. And I think there's a lot of positivity and a lot to look forward to in this summer pre-season and looking on to next season. So although it's been such a write-off of a season, I think at the end of it we've got quite a lot of positives to look at. No more Bates here anymore. Obviously he's going to be there as president, but hopefully that isn't going to have any sort of significance to how the club's actually run or anything. GFH, hopefully, they seem to be doing their best with some of the things they're doing around the club. Certain offers, the lowering of season ticket prices, the new membership deals that have come out, and just various things that they keep saying and doing, which is more positive than what Bates has ever done. Obviously, a lot of the youngsters have been signing professional contracts lately. I think the most recent one was Chris Dawson, who he seems to be a really good up and coming player from the youth squad. McDermott, as I've already said, that's a massive positive, and hopefully if he can get those players in that he wants, the players that have been released, obviously a few of them were quite obvious. Kisnorbo, obviously with his injuries and stuff, he was never going to get back into the squad. David Sommer, which is a really sad case for him. Really got to feel sorry for the guy, because he was clearly quite a talented player. I felt he was going to be a decent player for us, but he's been so unlucky with his injuries. So obviously he was released. But again, nice to see that the club are actually going to be helping him, in his rehabilitation and helping him in his next step of his career. And yeah, I think there's going to be a lot more positivity around the place, and I hope I'm not wrong there. So yeah, that's really the season as I've seen it, guys. Obviously, I want to know what you thought of it. I think I can probably guess what you're going to be saying. I'm guessing probably along the same lines as what I've said. But yeah, I want you guys, you know, as I've already done on Twitter, you know, send me your description of the season in 3 words. You know, that'd be good to get your interactions, and let me know your thoughts about the season as a whole. Anything that I've sort of missed off there that you'd like to talk about or discuss, I'll be happy to do that over the comments or on my Twitter. So yeah, do get in touch, guys. As always, my Twitter's at ChrisJonesLUFC. I'm already looking to next season and some new features I'm going to be doing. I'm getting a membership for next season, so I'm hoping to get to quite a few away games actually. So I thought of taking my camera to some away games and doing like a Jonesy's away days sort of feature thing. You know, sort of a clip kind of show of an away day with Leeds United. I thought that'd be quite a fun thing to do. And also another big thing I'm hoping to do, maybe a weekly feature, would to properly get you guys involved. Anyone who would be happy to do sort of a joint speaking you know, vlog with me. If you have a webcam or some sort of audio device, a microphone or something, and if you have Skype, then I was thinking of doing, you know, a Jonesy featuring, you know, someone out there. I'm going to put it out on Twitter and see if anyone's interested in that, and you know, really get a good group of people that we can have you know, a weekly discussion about all things Leeds United and other, you know, footballing and sporting stories that are in the news. So I thought that'd be quite a fun thing to do. So yeah, let me know your thoughts about some new ideas that I could do next season. Maybe some ideas of things I can do over this summer. I've got a few things again in my head that I might do, but you know, your suggestions are always welcome, as always, guys. So yeah, it's been a long, hard season. You know, it's been a lot more downs than ups from our point of view. But you know, as you know, in relation to my vlog and my YouTube channel, it's definitely been a massive high point of my season. It's made it a bit more enjoyable. Obviously getting in contact with some new people and talking to you guys out there, it's been absolutely fantastic. So you know, thank you for everyone for viewing these vlogs and for sharing them and liking them, and you know, getting me up to nearly 10,000 views, and I've got 40 subscribers. So like I've already said, you know, it's bigger and better than what I thought it was going to be. So you know, hopefully it can get even bigger and even better over the summer and leading on into next season. So a big thank you to you guys for watching, as always. Get in contact, as I say, over here or on my Twitter at ChrisJonesLUFC, and I will be speaking to you very soon, hopefully, guys.